This story is told from the perspective of a woman. I will not tell you who I am, where I work, or any personal details at all. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is what happened to me 3 days ago. I will describe only what is directly related to that nightmare. I live with my daughter. We are not rich, but we have enough to get by. My husband, he drank. He drank a lot, non-stop, and that is ultimately what killed him. And yes, one way or another, the story is connected to him. Or rather, not exactly to him, but more on that later. We were once an ordinary, unremarkable family. Everything changed after the death of his mother, my mother-in-law. Mark started drinking, and I still don't understand why it hit him so hard at that time. Maybe it was connected to what happened to me later. I don't know. Be that as it may, my daughter and I now live alone. Her name is Kate. She is 8. One evening, I came home from work, completely exhausted. Kate was sitting at the table doing her homework, everything as usual. I threw my bag onto the shelf in the hallway, changed my clothes, and went to the kitchen to heat up yesterday's soup. I was terribly hungry. Just a few minutes after dinner, there was a knock at the door. Strange. I wasn't expecting anyone, but 8 in the evening, who knows, maybe it's the neighbors. I looked through the peephole, nothing. Only the flickering light bulb on the landing, which no one seems to be able to replace for an eternity. Good Lord, where do I live? Sometimes I thought that the choice of my place of birth was my biggest mistake. My mood was awful. I went back to the room to watch TV. But as soon as I picked up the remote, I heard the knocking again. I looked through the peephole again and again. No one. I opened the door, looked out, empty. Strange. What nonsense is this? Am I starting to imagine things? Although the sound was clearly real. I went back to the room, lay down on the sofa, and turned on the TV. Soap operas were my only salvation from this gray existence. About an hour later, there was another knock. "Katie, go see who's knocking," I asked. Kata came into my room, surprised, and said, "Mom, no one is knocking for us." What? Looks like it's time to stop working double shifts. I'm already starting to hear things that aren't there. About an hour later, fatigue finally began to overwhelm me. I put Kate to bed in my room, told her a short fairy tale, and lay down next to her. But the sleep was short-lived. I was torn from it by the loud slam of the front door, as if someone had come in and immediately left. For the first moment, I wasn't even alarmed. Marky used to come home late all the time. But after 5 seconds, it dawned on me. What the hell? Mark, he's dead. So who slammed the door then? Throwing on my robe, I went out into the hallway. The door was wide open, and I distinctly remembered closing it. I always lock it with 2 bolts before going to bed, but now they weren't just unlocked. The door itself was gaping open. That's when fear really crept up on me, cold, tapping needles on my skin. I slammed the door, locked both bolts, and went back to Kate. I put her back to bed and laid down next to her. I couldn't sleep any more that night. What was that? I'm not into mysticism. I don't believe in evil spirits, the devil, or ghosts, but this felt too wrong. And yet, towards morning, around 7, I finally passed out. It was Saturday. Kate didn't have school, and I didn't have to work either. For some reason, I woke up very early, after only 2 hours of sleep. I felt as if I had been unloading freight cars all night. My head was heavy, my body felt like cotton wool. I didn't want to get up, but for some reason I couldn't sleep any longer either. But I had to. Breakfast doesn't make itself. I trudged to the kitchen in my robe, and the first thing I saw, a cup. It was standing in the middle of the table. So what? A cup is just a cup. But no, it was Mark's cup. My first thought was so absurd that I couldn't believe it myself. After all, I had thrown out all of his things, down to the last little thing. I didn't want to remember or live among those ghosts of the past. So how did it end up here? This was truly frightening. A whole wave of chills washed over me. With trembling hands, I took out a cigarette, sat down at the table, and lit it. My head was filled with absurd, disjointed thoughts, not a single coherent one. I only snapped out of it when the cigarette burned down to the filter and scorched my finger. I remembered why I had come to the kitchen in the first place. I threw the damn cup in the trash and started making breakfast. The day spun by with household chores, laundry, cleaning, cooking. Gradually, I even forgot about the night's strangeness. The fatigue remained, but I chalked it up to running around the house. Kate was out playing almost all day and came back for dinner. We ate. She went to her room, and I collapsed on the sofa and passed out almost immediately. It was around 8 or 9 in the evening, but not for long. About an hour or two later, I was woken up by thirst. Half asleep, I went to the kitchen. Kate was already there, scrolling through her phone. I poured some water and froze. It was the same cup. The very one. The one I had thrown away in the morning. I was pierced as if by an icy needle. What the hell is going on here? I left the cup on the table, put Kate to bed, and went to my room. My mind was a mess. Doors opening by themselves, things appearing out of nowhere, and now this cursed cup. And the constant, oppressive fatigue. Maybe I'm sick, but no fever, no other symptoms. And yet, to my surprise, I fell asleep fairly quickly. And the night passed quietly. The strangeness began again in the morning. The front door was open again. And even worse, Mark's things started appearing around the apartment. His sneakers were neatly placed by the shoe rack. His jacket was hanging in the closet. The cup. Various small items. Is this someone's cruel joke? But it's not funny at all. And in the evening, Kate developed a fever. She turned pale, wouldn't eat anything. Neither would I. Something terribly wrong was clearly happening in the apartment. Her temperature reached 39 degrees. I called an ambulance and we went to the hospital. I spent the night in the hospital next to Kate. In the morning, I went home. I needed to make her some proper food. What they give there can hardly be called food. When I entered the apartment, I didn't see anything suspicious, but the fatigue hadn't gone away, and I was noticing more and more clearly that it intensified right here, within these walls. Plus, there was a strange feeling, as if the night promised to be bad. I don't know why, but the premonition was pressing down on me. I cooked the food, packed the containers, got dressed, and left the building. Our neighbor, Emma, a kind old woman who lives one floor below, was standing near the house. "Honey, come here, I need to tell you something," she called. "Hello, Emma," I greeted her. "It's just, I'm old, I have trouble sleeping. Could you please not run around at night? I understand, a child, all that, but the ceilings are thin. Everything can be heard. I can't sleep at all." "What do you mean? No one runs around at night at my place, Emma. People are generally sleeping at that time." She looked at me strangely, as if reading my thoughts. "Maybe no one slams the door either then," she said with an expression that suggested she knew more than she was saying. I just turned around and left. My God, so it's not all in my head? She heard it too. But if we were at the hospital all night, then who was walking, running, slamming the door? With this question, I walked towards the hospital, and upon entering, I was astonished. The doctor said Kate was perfectly fine, completely healthy. I could take her home right then. Kate ran out of the hospital room and hugged me tightly. Half an hour later, we were walking home, but as soon as our house came into view ahead, anxious thoughts started creeping back into my mind. You might say, well, why didn't you just move, at least for a while? Where? Kate and I are alone in this world. No relatives, no friends, no money. Winter was approaching. We had nowhere to sleep. So, it meant we had to go back to that apartment. We had dinner. I put Kate to bed, and I went to take a shower. I unfolded the sofa and fell asleep almost immediately. And then, around 2 o'clock in the morning, it happened. The thing that is still burned into my eyes. The most terrifying moment of my entire 35 years. I was woken by Kate. She had gotten up to use the bathroom and gently touched my shoulder. "Mom, who's sleeping with you?" Sleep vanished instantly. I felt it. Someone was really lying next to me. Fear washed over me so completely that I started shaking. Something was lying on the bed right up against me. And in the mirror on the bedside table, I saw the reflection. A creature. It had human features, but its face was deathly white, almost transparent. Its eyes were completely black, and it was lying under my blanket, covered up, as if it were sleeping. Panic consumed me entirely. I quietly slid off the sofa. It didn't move, not a sound. I dressed myself, quickly dressed Kate, and just as quietly led her out of the apartment. It either didn't notice or it let us leave. My hands were shaking. Kate was crying. We left the building and saw what finished me for good. From our kitchen window, staring straight down at me, was that creature, piercingly, right through me. The fear was indescribable. I decided to go to Emma. We had no other choice. I knocked on her door about 10 times. She opened it, sleepy, but let us in. I told her everything. A religious woman, so she believed me and allowed us to stay with her for as long as needed. I decided to sell the apartment. What it was, I have no idea, but it's impossible to live there anymore. Life at Emma's gradually settled into a routine. Kate went to school, I went to work. Everything became calm. Until one moment. Until one night, I heard a knock at the door, and right after, that all too familiar slam.